Thanks for joining us. Patty Wolson was a 26-year-old mother who just one day was dead in the bathroom. She was found by her daughter, 4-year-old Janine. At first glance, it was evident this was no accident. Patty had bruising on her neck, indicating someone had strangled her. Nothing appeared out of place, so it didn't seem as if the motive for Patty's attack was burglary. And the other peculiar thing that stood out was the front door of the apartment or of the area was blocked with a chair shoved underneath the doorknob, so nobody could open it from the outside. All of this had happened with Patty's 2 young kids upstairs. The autopsy showed that there was no evidence of sexual assault. I know you were going to ask that. She had a hemorrhage between her brain and skull, which showed that she had been struck in the head as well. And she had been struck to her right temple prior to dying. That happened prior to death. So her cause of death was actually manual strangulation. The bruising pattern showed that Patty was facing her killer while she was strangled. So it wasn't a surprise attack either. And her wounds were, quote, very extensive and extraordinary. According to the medical examiner, that showed the attack went on for quite a long period of time. The autopsy also showed that the killer had long fingernails, as there had been scratches and puncture marks found in addition to the bruising. Oh. Yeah.
This is an extended attack that lasted a period of, sounds like several minutes, followed by strangulation. Like, this is a multi-stage happening here. You take the blunt force trauma.
She'd been hit in the head, and then she was strangled for
maybe even hit in the temple or the face and the side of the head too.
She was hit in the temple.
Yeah.
So she was hit and she was struck to her right temple, and then she was strangled. So for multiple minutes. Wow. Yeah. And her death likely occurred after 11 p.m.
All while her kids were sleeping upstairs.
Yeah. Patty's neck was so severely damaged during the strangulation, there was very little doubt that there was a lot of anger behind it at this point. I mean, because that does not happen without any anger.
And that was, of course, ultimately the cause of death was the strangulation. Yeah.
Yep. Her cause of death was manual strangulation. Yep. Wow. And detectives knew at this point that Patty's murder was personal, because strangulations typically are. They usually are. Because while a person can lose consciousness in less than a minute, it takes 4 to 5 minutes for death to happen. So Patty looked into the eyes of her killer until she lost consciousness. Patty's parents got the call that their daughter had been murdered while the family was getting ready for church on Sunday. Their lives would never be the same. Anybody in that situation, they never are.
Yeah, it's not something you would want to pick up the phone and hear. That is so sad.
And Patty Wolson was the only daughter out of 5 kids, and she was so close with her family. She seemed to really learn what motherhood looked like from her own mom. So when she became a mother, her life was dedicated to them. Investigators began piecing together Patty's last night. Around 7:30 p.m., she spoke with her 16-year-old brother, Scott. She asked him if he wanted to come over to help her finish decorating for Christmas. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to. Can you imagine it being that being the last phone call you have with your sister?
Yeah, for sure. Scott has sadly probably dealt with some survivor's guilt. Has probably thought to himself, if I had gone over there that night, would this have happened?
Yeah.
And you can't, of course, bog yourself down with that, but it is just human nature.
It is
for that to occur.
Absolutely.
And I guarantee that has been a really, really difficult for him.
Yeah.
So sad.
Well, at approximately 10:30 p.m. that night, so just about 3 hours later, she spoke with a different relative for about 15 minutes. Patty's 4-year-old daughter had a Christmas program coming up, and he wanted to make sure of the date and time. They were chit-chatting. End of it.
Okay.
She would be dead within an hour.
Wow.
Patty's family strongly encouraged police that her ex-husband may be responsible.
Okay, thank you. This was going to be the first person I would be suspicious of. What's up with the father of the children?
Yeah. Well, he had a history of physical and verbal abuse toward her, and at one point had even threatened Patty in front of her parents.
See, and we already know that she's been strangled. That is a male thing. That is a male way of killing.
And it's personal. More than anything.
Sure.
It's personal. But
no sexual assault. So.
But if he's just angry, if it were him and he's angry, it's kind of checking those boxes, right? It's kind of starting to make sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And according to her family, it was no secret to them that their former son-in-law was still threatening her. So Patty was confiding in her family that he was still threatening her.
Bring him in. Let's go.
Yeah. The two shared custody, and while there wasn't any hostility while the kids were being dropped off, maybe there was a chance that she would have let him in, which would show, that she knew her, why she, and
certainly that whoever did this maybe was familiar to her, given the lack of signs of a break-in.
For sure. I mean, I think
I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it feels likely.
And I don't want to say it's a guarantee by any means, but investigators have picked up on that as well.
Absolutely.
There's no sign of a forced entry. There's not one. Really, no sign of a struggle.
Yeah.
So,
and again, back to no burglary, back to nothing stolen or missing. So
she likely do. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody wanted to do this very specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they brought him in. Detectives brought in 27-year-old ex-husband of Patty, and the shock and devastation that washed over him appeared to be genuine. They were, just by that reaction alone, they were pretty sure he was not their guy.
He did a proper job of showing grief.
Right.
He did the proper format of grief.
He did the proper amount.
Proper grief format applied, test passed, innocent. Okay.
And so it's funny you say that, because even in my brain, I was like, oh, so what if he's just a really good actor, right? I mean, yeah.
Like, it didn't seem practiced. I don't know.
Which you can tell. You can tell if something is practiced. You can see that. But I think, especially in this time frame, we would just assume, even now, we assume that someone is guilty because they're not reacting enough. But you can really see when it's rehearsed.
And if they react too much, it's like, oh man, it was really weird.
That's ridiculous.
That
Why
was
are you?
Too much.
Yeah, talk about toxic masculinity.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, but anyway, so when he gave details of his own evening, he was incredibly emotional and almost in disbelief.
Poor guy.
So just in absolute disbelief.
So even if he might have been a bit of a jerk, and sounds like he mistreated Patty.
Yeah, and that doesn't excuse him from any of the physical.
Doesn't make him a killer either.
Right, exactly. It doesn't excuse him from the physical or verbal abuse, but just because you're abusive doesn't mean you're a murderer, right? So, but of course, statistics show that you might become one. But anyway, regardless.
Statistics show that it gets to be a pretty fine line.
There's a fine line there, just according to statistics. But Patty's ex-husband claimed to have been home at during the time of the murder. He was alone. But it was clear that this man had means, motive, and opportunity. So he recounted his story numerous times, and not once did it waver. Not once. So and not in a rehearsed manner, but it didn't change. Nothing stood out to them that he had changed.
When investigators question somebody who they suspect like this, they're going to ask the same questions, the same story. They want you to repeat it, and they're looking for consistency.
Yeah, and they're going to ask it in a different way.
Yeah,
they're going to try and trip you up. It's part of it.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
And when your consistency fractures, that's when their suspicions rise.
Well, he offered to take a polygraph test, and it was a bit of a surprise that he passed. So he's definitely not it. But investigators also talked with Patty's friends. They described Patty just as her family had. They also shared that Patty had been dating a couple of different people at the time, but one person stood out more than the others. So when we return, find out who that person is.